Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the lounge, the Women's Wisdom Lounge. And each week we're sharing the wisdom of the members of this group. And so it's my absolute pleasure to be here with you this morning and to be interviewing Roseanne Williams. Welcome, Roseanne.
Thank you, Brenda.
So Roseanne is a mind-body Bowen therapist, which what I love about lots of the people that I get to chat with is that they have their primary professions, but then they go deeper and deeper. And so Roseanne also has qualifications in kinesiology, NLP, coaching and matrix therapies. Oh my God, hours and hours of study, cellular health coaching. She's a Reiki master and a TRE, trauma release facilitator. And she's been in the industry over 20 years doing beautiful work with clients and on herself, I imagine, at the same time. So, Roseanne, let's just start by, tell me, how did you start? Was Bowen therapy the first thing that you qualified in? And how did your journey start?
No, I'd been doing energetic body work for years. I'd been interested in natural therapies, alternative therapies since I was, I guess, a kid. It was just, I was always kind of a bit of that, square peg, and
I'm sure a few of us can relate to that.
surrounded by a lot of round holes. And I started with energetic body work. And I still love that. That's kind of my bliss in a way, as opposed to my passion. That's my bliss. And I still do love doing that work. But when I was probably when I was in my 30s, I was involved in a really bad car accident. And I had a head injury and whiplash, and struggled for quite a long time afterwards with speech issues, just a lot of cognitive issues. But what was the real struggle for me at that time was started developing migraines, and I would lose 2 out of every 3 days to migraine. And I had 2 little kids. I was basically struggling some days to get them to school, because I had the migraines where I'd get halos, and so I would literally be driving blind if I was taking them to school. And it just went on, and I did try everything. And I tried remedial massage, acupuncture, went to neurologists, chiropractic work, and all of those things did give relief. But as is often the case, horses for courses, nothing gave me long-term relief. We'd maybe get down to sort of like two days a week of not having migraines, and it just wasn't sustainable. And clearly it was no fun at all either. A friend said to me, you've got to try Bowen therapy. I had no idea what it was. I walked in and had a huge emotional release on the table after the woman started doing Bowen on me, and, walked out without a migraine. That was probably in around about 2004. And I've probably had 7 or 8 migraines since, which, I could have had in less than a month before. So it was something that actually gave me long-term relief. And it suddenly, something clicked about the fact that the body has this innate intelligence, the fact that given the right conditions, it really wants to move towards healing. And
so can I ask you, I'm cutting you off, I realise that, but for the uninitiated, what the heck is Bowen therapy?
So Bowen is, it's a very gentle basically a myofascial technique. So similar to massage, but not massage, in the sense that we are doing gentle rolling moves over the body, but we're utilizing the fascia, the layers of connective tissue through the body. So fascia surrounds everything. It surrounds every muscle, bone, nerve, organ, you name it, there's fascia, to the point where, this connective tissue has been very much disregarded for a long time and considered to be unimportant packaging. The reality is, if I were to take your body and put it in a bath of something that dissolved all fascia and nothing else, you would end up with this kind of skin bag full of bones and muscles and organs and eyeballs and everything floating around, inside. On the opposite side of that, if I were to take your body and put it in a bath of something that dissolved everything except for fascia, what you would have is this little Brenda-shaped suit. It's
wow.
This connective tissue is what gives us form. It gives us structure. It gives us integrity. It gives our bodies integrity. Without connective tissue, the bones and the muscles, as I said, everything's just floating around doing nothing. We would not survive without this connective tissue, but it's just been overlooked for so many years. So whilst it gives us, on one hand, this beautiful integrity, it also gives us freedom. This is the point. It gives us integrity and it gives us freedom. When you cut up, when you get a chicken breast fillet to cut up, that really thin membrane. So that is really what fascia does. It provides for easy sliding movement. It enables our lungs to sort of, move within the chest cavity, our heart to beat without friction, just complete freedom of movement. So
freedom and grace.
Yeah. So that's what we work with, basically.
So, it sounds amazing. So in regard to, because you obviously then have experienced great pain, because migraines are pretty up there on the pain scale. And the theme of our little chat today is about the language of pain and what pain is trying to tell us. And I work a lot of that in my clinic too, trying to interpret what the pain or what the symptom is trying to tell us. I love a different modality that does that. But in your own particular instance, with all that pain, post-trauma, post-injury, are you willing to share with us what the purpose of your pain was and how the Bowen managed, what did it actually do to release the pain or shift the pain? How did that work?
So just kind of digressing there slightly with regards to the purpose of pain, because I believe, to me, I think the overarching purpose of pain is it's a messenger. It's telling us that something in our life is not working. That, it's either a harm alarm where, there's something wrong, and, that part of our brain, that recognizes danger goes, something's wrong here, and pain is a really great way of stopping humans, hurting themselves. If things didn't hurt, we'd slice ourselves open and do all sorts of terrible things without actually knowing. So it serves that, I guess, that very biological function of ensuring survival, which is, obviously critical to survival of the species. And that's where that sort of, two aspects of us comes in. There's there's very much that physical, yes, we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, but we're also stuck in a body that hasn't really changed that much for tens of thousands of years. You know, the brain wiring is still pretty much the same. So on, you know, one hand, you've got this sense of, you know, the brain recognizes or perceives a threat, and a threat doesn't have to be, you know, real. It just has to be perceived as being a threat. And, you know, it activates that social nervous system, our fight, flight, freeze. So we've got our pain on one side, which is very much that survival type reality. You know, we dislocated our knee, we've, you know, picked up a television, which we shouldn't have done, and, you know, our back's gone and we can't move. And then on the other hand, there is that sort of more spiritual side to us, that the spiritual being that's having that physical existence. And I believe it's to me, it's a warning system. It's very much a communication system. What's not working for me in terms of, yep, picking up a TV didn't work for me, you know, I really hurt my back. But by the same token, you know, what's not working for me emotionally, what's not working for me spiritually, and how many layers down is that? How deep do you want to go? And, you know, it can be something, you know, really, really simple. It can be something along the lines of, you know, our knees giving us trouble, you know. And I mean, is that about, you know, if we, particularly with chronic conditions, I think that's kind of very important fact. You know, if you're looking at something where your left knee started hurting because you fell down the stairs, it's less of a purpose in terms of trying to create or convey a message. But if a condition is or a pain is chronic, then it's, what is the underlying issue here? You know, do we have a fear of moving forward in life? We have so many of these old expressions like, you know, I've got the weight of the world on my shoulders, you know. And when we have shoulder issues, we need to look at, are we feeling burdened? Where are we feeling like there's just so much responsibility weighing us down? And we have old expressions that we no longer pay attention to. It makes me sick to my stomach. It really galls me when he does that. You know, like, it's just, I feel like, you know, I'm just all feeling choked up. All these old expressions, even expressions that we use, like, it really pisses me off. You know, there's so many things that we say, but we really just don't pay attention. And I think the purpose of pain is to get us to pay attention. You know, I think our bodies whisper first, and eventually, if we don't listen, they scream. And that's what I love, you know, about sort of the purpose of pain is, you know, finding that story. What is that pain trying to tell us? Because our bodies, I found working in clinic that sometimes people could come in and you do, you know, one session, few moves, and they'd be like, oh, that's great, you know, I feel fantastic, off I go. And then there would be cases where you'd have people just coming back time and time again, and they're still feeling stuck in that pain, stuck in their body. And, you know, it's really then time to dig deeper. What's not working for you here? Let's pursue the story that your pain's trying to tell you. And the beautiful thing about Bowen therapy and kinesiology is that they're so complementary, because they both, to an extent, rely on the acupuncture system, and the wisdom, you know, thousands of years of wisdom that, you know, is available to us through traditional Chinese medicine in terms of the acupuncture systems. And you know, 5-element theory relates very much to Bowen therapy. We can use kinesiology, the muscle testing with kinesiology, to ascertain okay, the pain's here, but is that actually coming from there? Or is it coming from down here? Or is it coming from up here? So for me, they're very complementary, and it works really well to combine a few wisdoms to find out what that, to find out what that story is. What's the story your pain's telling you?
So I'm trained in Yin Yoga, which is a combination of yoga and that 5-element yin yang system as well. And one of the things that I learned, and I don't know if this is 100% accurate, but one of the things I learned was that the meridians follow the connective tissue channels. They're actually located in connective tissue. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, 100%. So, within not just Bowen therapy, but within a few sort of body-based modalities, we look at what are called the fascial trains, and they're basically lines of connective tissue that have been identified as being connected physically and energetically to the meridians. So, for example, you'll have the superficial back line, which goes from the fascia, the plantar fascia on the bottom of the feet, all the way up the back of the legs and the back, and comes up the back of the neck and finishes at the scalp fascia, which is the bladder meridian.
Yeah.
The deep front line, which is the connective tissue that has all those deep body muscles, like the psoas muscle and the diaphragm, which controls our breathing. They all are, that deep front line all relates to the kidney meridian.
Mm-hmm.
And so interestingly, the kidney meridian is all about, fear and safety. And when we're in a situation in life where we don't feel safe, often those muscles, the diaphragm, which controls our breathing, and the psoas, that they're the muscles that will give us issues. So again, it's another way of the body telling us a story. It's like, excuse me.
So the psoas muscle runs down the front of the hip, right?
Yep.
So if you have, hey, I'll put that on airplane mode. Go away. If you have a fear issue, then you're talking about fear and pain, and it is tightening your psoas. What kind of symptoms might you see? What would you see? Lower back pain, or just?
Absolutely, you'd see lower back pain. You would see groin pain. And because the psoas, originates along basically sort of the inside. When I say the inside of the spine, I don't mean within the spine, but inside the body, up against the vertebrae, and it does go down through the pelvis and inserts into the inside of the femur. What that does is it creates a tension pattern that pulls our abdomen forward, and it does create lower back pain. It also creates that inability to sort of, stretch and have beautiful length and movement of the hips. They would be the things you'd be looking at, sort of basically pelvis pain, inability to sort of externally rotate the legs, or lower back pain. Yep.
And so, because somebody might have lower back pain, they might go and see a physiotherapist, right, who gives them exercises, whatever they do in the clinic, and then they get these exercises. How is Bowen different to that, and what benefits?
So the benefit I feel with Bowen is that, and physio, everything has its place. Everything absolutely 100% has its place. And whereas with physio, you're looking to strengthen those muscles or maybe stretch those muscles. But if a muscle is in a state of contraction, then, stretching a muscle that's just contracted is not necessarily going to release it. All it's going to do, you've got this muscle that's really contracted and you're trying to stretch it one, from top to bottom. And what that does is it sends a message back to the brain saying, oh my God, we're already in trouble. That's why we're so tight and contracted. And now they're trying to stretch us. So we need to contract even harder,
Yeah.
So sometimes it cannot, it can be, stretching a muscle can be unhelpful. And it really depends. Whereas with Bowen, it actually, we release the muscle, we release the tension pattern in the muscle.
Yeah, right. So what is the meaning behind migraines? Because I grew up with migraines as well, and they're in my family history, like my mother and my grandmother and my sister. And you're talking about migraines. What does that relate to in meridians and potential emotional stuff?
It can be really quite complex. Sorry, I've got something coming up here too that I need to actually go away. Oh, I'm sorry. So yeah, often with a migraine, there it can be about being, overcommitted, overwhelmed. It's about control and pressure. And I have to say also, with regards to that, it wasn't just, a car accident that started my migraines. I was actually going through, a marriage breakdown and everything at the time as well. So there was a lot more to it than that, and, how much does sort of the universe put one and one together and come up with 59. And with migraines, often too, there's a great need for love and approval. And, as I said, I was going through a marriage breakdown. There wasn't a lot of love and approval at the time. I was struggling with my, the mum's guilt of breaking up, my kids, all my kids' happy family unit breaking down. And with migraines, it's often about that, putting the needs of others first before your own. So there was so much to learn from that migraine. There was migraines are extreme worry, extreme guilt, extreme anxiety, tick, tick, tick. I was really feeling all of those. Conflict within that sort of structure of guilt and relationships. And clearly there was a lot of that going on as well. So, the pain is a messenger that something's not right, but it can give us so much information if we look to, where that pain manifests in our body. What is the story it's telling us? Is it telling us that, we are feeling sort of, terrible conflict, inner conflict, external conflict, guilt, worry, putting other people's needs first? Or is it actually telling us, which could manifest as a migraine or something like that? Or, do we have, terrible, inexplicable knee pain, which is just telling us, that we're really afraid of moving forward in life? So sometimes it can make that journey deep into ourselves, deep into our souls, and just looking at our lives, it can make that so much easier. It oftentimes, when we with Mind Body Bowen, we start talking about where the pain is, and it's like, hey, what was going on in your life at that time? And the stories that come out, whether they're from 10 years ago or whether they're from 40 years ago, really, can really correlate amazingly with what the client is experiencing in their body at the time. And I think just often that realization of the story that pain is trying to tell them, as well as, just bringing that awareness to the surface often the pain will resolve on its own.
So one final question, because we're getting close to time, and I also like you to give us how to contact you and all that kind of thing, or any offer that you have for our audience at the end as well. But just a little bit of a way out there question just to finish off on. As I said, my mum had it, migraines. I grew up with migraines. I kind of grew out of them because I moved into health. But my grandmother struggled terribly. So how does that work? How do migraines become passed down if they have an emotional foundation? And I know we're getting into tricky waters here, but
not at all.
Do we pass down in our genetics not only a physical code but an emotional code as well, or are we dealing with unfinished business? If
always, yeah, 100%. The reality is that we mother the way we've been mothered. We learn how to be a daughter by watching how our mother was a daughter. There's very much that sort of that social, emotional side of things. It's the habits, we make a cake this way because that's the way our mother made a cake and the way her mother. And so some of it, is very much just the way it's been done, for generation after generation. And we've also proven, studies have proven that intergenerational trauma is handed down on the genes. And this can go back as far as 7 generations. Yeah. They did studies with monkeys, and these monkeys, learned behavior based on, traumatic punishment. And they proved on one hand
awful, by the way.
I know. It's like, who thinks of these experiments? Yeah. But it was handed down on one side behaviorally from one generation watching the previous generation, punish supposed to do because they would get an electric shock. But then they realized that if they actually took one generation of monkeys away, the behavior was still like from their parents, and they didn't actually witness this horrible thing. Yeah, this horrible thing. They also had this obvious behavioral traits that were sort of saying, no, this is wrong, and we need to stop everybody doing it because we don't know why, but it was handed down on the genes, and we know that it can go 7 generations back, from a spiritual point of view and from a physical point of view. So, when you think about that, you've got 2 parents and 4 grandparents and 8 great-grandparents, and, that goes back 7 generations. It's something like 254 people, 254 ancestors, that have all had trauma of one sort or another, and who knows what's been passed down. So sometimes we're dealing with something that we know about or something that we've suppressed from our childhood, but sometimes it's not even our stuff and we've still got it. The beautiful thing about body work, Bowen work, kinesiology, energetic work is that we don't have to know what it was about to heal it. No. Yes, there is that expression, feel it to heal it. But sometimes you can just let that shit go, quite frankly. You really can. And people will often have, emotional releases on the table, and it's like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, nothing, absolutely nothing. Their body's crying, tears are pouring out of their eyes, but there's really no sort of emotional charge there. So it's quite interesting. We don't have to always feel it to heal it.
And amazing work for you to witness as well. So, and to be, to participate in somebody else's healing. So tell us about how we can tell us about your practice and where you are and what your contact. We can put your contact details below in the chat. But yeah, just give us an idea.
Well, yep, I work from a yoga studio at Mulgrave, which I'll give you the details for, and I also work from my home clinic in Glenhaven. I am working more online at the moment than face to face than I have been. Strangely,
you can do this online remotely. Wow.
Weird as that seems, you can, yeah, because the reality is energy is energy, and it goes everywhere. The first time I did, actually, kinesiology has been done online, and distantly for a long time. But distant Bowen therapy, whilst it's a little more outside the box, it's becoming a little bit more accepted. The first time I sort of came, had anything to do with it was when, my sister had retired and, gone on the trip of a lifetime, and she got to Scotland, where she'd been wanting to go for 25 years. And within 12 hours of being there, she rolled her ankle and it was black and she couldn't walk on it or go on any of her adventures. So, so I did a distant Bowen session, and she woke up the next morning with her ankle still black, but pretty much pain-free and able to walk on it and go and do all those things that she wanted to do. So, yeah, I am working more distantly so I can more easily integrate, all those different aspects of Bowen therapy and kinesiology and NLP and matrix therapies. But yeah, I do also work face-to-face because, that's always nice too.
Yeah, great. Wow. Well, thank you so much. Any sort of final little tidbit or hack or words of wisdom for our wonderful Women's Wisdom audience?
Yeah.
Something that you wish you'd known when you were 25.
Oh no, we don't have a piece of paper long enough for that list. But I guess one thing that I've learned is that, the brain doesn't just send messages to the body sends messages to the brain. So when we're in that state of nervous system dysregulation, and we're either in fight or, we're in freeze, which is rabbit in the headlights, doing all of those things that we would normally do in a relaxed, social, connected state, are some of the things that if we actually can do those, it can hack the brain. It can tell the brain that, the emergency's over, you can relax. And that's why the breathing works. That's why dancing works, going and doing artwork, playing music, any of those things that you would normally do when you're in that relaxed, rest and digest, socially engaged state. If you can somehow or other do some of those, even if it's just as simple as breathing or focusing on what's around you rather than being a complete rabbit in the headlights, it can actually, hack your brain and go, you know what, it's okay. I can.
Oh, great to know.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Always helpful.
All right. Well, we're going to say goodbye. Thank you very much for your time, Roseanne. Hold on. Well, we're just going to end here. And guys, if you have any questions, pop them in the chat. Both Roseanne and I are here to answer them. And thanks for being here with us. So thank you.